Hello, history buffs, time travelers, and scholars. Medieval sword fights were more than just battles. They were intense displays of skill, bravery, and deadly determination. These duels weren't random clashes. They often followed strict rules, whether fought to defend honor, settle disputes, or decide life and death matters. From trial by combat to legendary duels on the battlefield, these fights shaped history and became the stuff of legends. The trial by combat. The trial by combat between Jean de Carouge and Jacques Legris in 1386 was one of the most famous and final duels of its kind in France. This deadly fight was born from a bitter accusation. Jean de Carouge, a respected knight, claimed that Jacques Legris, once his friend, had attacked his wife Marguerite. With no solid evidence or witnesses, the court allowed them to settle the matter through a fight to the death, believing that divine judgment would reveal the truth. The stakes were unimaginably high. If Jean lost, not only would he die, but Marguerite would also face execution for making a false accusation. On the other hand, Legris stood to lose his life if found guilty. The duel took place in front of a huge crowd, including King Charles VI, making it a spectacle as much as a fight for justice. The combat itself was brutal and unrelenting. The two knights, armed with swords, axes, and daggers, fought with all their strength and skill. The duel pushed them to their limits, but Jean eventually emerged victorious, killing Legris. His win was seen as proof of his wife's innocence and their truth. This fight wasn't just about the outcome. It revealed the harsh realities of medieval justice, where honor, belief, and survival were tightly intertwined. Even today, the story remains a powerful example of how life and death could be decided by the sword. The Combat of the 30, a battle of honor and pride. In 1351, during the Breton War of Succession, one of the most unique and deadly fights in medieval history unfolded, the Combat of the 30. This was no ordinary clash. It was a staged battle between two groups of 30 knights, carefully chosen to represent opposing factions fighting for control over Brittany. On one side stood the French knights led by Jean de Beaumanoir, and on the other were English-aligned forces led by Robert Brambro. The fight was arranged as a way to settle disputes without dragging entire armies into battle. Both sides agreed to the terms, and the combat took place on an open field, surrounded by spectators. It was as much a display of chivalry and martial skill as it was a violent fight to the death. The battle tested not only the knights' strength, but also their loyalty and bravery. The combat was fierce, with knights wielding swords, axes, and lances. Blood stained the ground as fighters pushed themselves to their limits. Jean de Beaumanoir, leading the French, reportedly cried out for water in the heat of battle. His comrades urged him to fight on, saying, "Drink your blood, Beaumanoir." The French ultimately emerged victorious, with many on both sides injured or killed. The Combat of the 30 became a symbol of knightly valor and loyalty, remembered not just for its brutality, but for the honor and pride that defined it. The Duel of Bramante and Rodomont. Though rooted in Italian lore, the tale of the duel between Bramante and Rodomont reflects the fierce spirit of medieval sword fights. Bramante, a noble warrior and one of literature's earliest female knights, was known for her unmatched skill in battle. Rodomont, a bold and brash Saracen knight, was infamous for his strength and arrogance. Their duel, though fictional, drew heavily from real-life chivalric traditions, making it a legendary example of deadly sword combat. The duel was sparked by Rodomont's insults and his relentless challenge to Bramante. She accepted, determined to defend her honor and prove that her skills were equal to any man's. The setting was dramatic, often depicted as a secluded battlefield or a grand arena, where their clash would have an audience of knights and nobles. The fight itself was a fierce and evenly matched contest. Bramante's speed and precision were pitted against Rodomont's raw power and aggression. The duel went on for hours, with neither combatant willing to yield. Their weapons clashed in a dazzling display of skill, creating a vivid picture of the deadly artistry of medieval sword fighting. In the end, Bramante's determination and cunning gave her the victory. Rodomont was forced to concede, and Bramante's honor was restored. This legendary duel has endured for centuries as a symbol of courage and the unbreakable will to stand firm against overwhelming odds. The judicial duels of the Holy Roman Empire. During the 14th century, the Holy Roman Empire embraced judicial duels as a way to settle disputes ranging from land ownership to accusations of dishonor. These duels were not chaotic brawls, but carefully structured events with strict rules. They were based on the belief that divine intervention would ensure the innocent would prevail, making the sword fight both a legal trial and a fight for survival. Combatants would often meet in specially designated arenas, surrounded by judges, nobles, and spectators. Both sides were typically armed with weapons agreed upon beforehand, most commonly single-handed swords or longswords. To ensure fairness, participants might even be required to wear identical clothing, such as simple shirts and hose, to remove any advantage of armor or hidden weapons. The duels were merciless. Fighters would engage in brutal combat until one yielded or was killed. Some duels allowed pauses, where mediators could attempt to negotiate an end to the fight, but these rarely succeeded. The belief in divine judgment pushed combatants to fight to the bitter end. These judicial duels were as much about spectacle as they were about justice. Crowds gathered to watch, seeing them as displays of skill, courage, and fate. Though rooted in medieval legal customs, these fights remain a vivid reminder of a time when the sword was the final word in disputes. Samurai versus European knights. The encounters between samurai and European knights in the 16th century were rare but fascinating moments in history. These meetings occurred during a time when European explorers, traders, and missionaries were beginning to venture into Japan. While the cultures were vastly different, both the samurai and knights shared a deep commitment to their martial traditions, making their clashes legendary. The samurai followed the Bushido code, which emphasized loyalty, discipline, and skill with the katana, a weapon prized for its sharpness and precision. European knights, on the other hand, were bound by chivalric codes and relied on their long swords, heavy armor, and brute strength. Their fighting styles reflected their contrasting cultures. The samurai focused on swift, precise strikes, while knights relied on endurance and overwhelming power. When these warriors clashed, the differences in their weaponry and techniques created intense and unpredictable duels. The katana, light and razor-sharp, was unmatched in close combat, while the knight's longsword was versatile and effective at both cutting and thrusting. Samurai wore lighter armor that allowed for greater mobility, whereas knights were encased in heavy plate armor, offering exceptional protection. The feuds of the Wars of the Roses, 1455 to 1487, were a series of bloody battles between the houses of York and Lancaster for the English throne. While these conflicts were marked by large-scale warfare, they also gave rise to fierce individual duels between rival knights. These personal clashes, fought amidst the chaos of battle, were often fueled by grudges, family rivalries, or challenges to personal honor. Knights on both sides adhered to the chivalric code, which made dueling a matter of pride and reputation. When two opposing knights spotted each other on the battlefield, they might engage in deadly one-on-one combat. Unlike formal duels held in controlled environments, these encounters were spontaneous and raw, with no set rules beyond survival. Each knight relied on their training, armor, and weaponry to outlast their opponent. The duels were brutal, with swords, maces, and battle axes crashing against shields and armor. Knights fought until one was killed, incapacitated, or forced to surrender. These fights often became legendary as they highlighted individual acts of bravery and skill. One of the most famous stories from the Wars of the Roses involved the knightly rivalry between Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, and his many opponents. Known as the Kingmaker, Warwick's prowess on the battlefield made him both feared and respected, with many knights seeking to challenge him directly. These personal duels added a deeply human element to the broader conflict, reminding everyone that even amidst a war for the throne, personal honor and grudges still held deadly importance. The Duel of Haldor and Thorkel, a Norse saga of revenge. In the medieval Norse world, duels were known as holmgangs, a ritualistic way to settle disputes, often over honor, land, or revenge. One of the most famous duels is the legendary fight between Haldor and Thorkel, two warriors whose clash was immortalized in the Icelandic sagas. This duel showcases the brutal yet honorable nature of Norse combat traditions. Haldor and Thorkel's feud began over a bitter argument about land inheritance. Both men refused mediation, and a holmgang was declared. The duel took place on a small, marked battlefield, often on an island or a shield-sized plot of land, to ensure neither fighter could retreat. Each man arrived with his weapons, typically swords and shields, as well as 3 spare shields, which were allowed to be replaced if broken during the fight. The duel was ferocious. Thorkel, known for his brute strength, fought with heavy, crushing strikes, while Haldor, a skilled and agile swordsman, relied on speed and precision. The holmgang lasted for hours, with both men exchanging deadly blows. Haldor's cunning ultimately gave him the upper hand as he shattered Thorkel's final shield and delivered a fatal strike. By Norse tradition, Haldor claimed victory, and with it, the disputed land. However, he also paid respects to Thorkel's bravery, as was customary in their warrior code. This duel remains a powerful tale of the deadly mix of pride, revenge, and strict tradition that defined Norse culture. The Duel of the Black Prince and King John II of France, one of the most famous duels of the 100 Years' War, took place in 1356 between Edward, the Black Prince, the son of King Edward III of England, and King John II of France. This duel was not a single combat, but was part of the larger Battle of Poitiers, where the two leaders, along with their armies, faced off in a struggle for dominance over French territory. However, the personal rivalry between the Black Prince and King John added a powerful and dramatic element to the battle. King John II, having been captured during the Battle of Poitiers, was forced to negotiate with the English. The Black Prince, known for his bravery and ruthless fighting tactics, was the English commander who had taken the French king as a prisoner. After the battle, a formal challenge was issued by both sides, with each leader agreeing to settle their differences through a duel if the terms of their army's fates could not be resolved by negotiation. The duel was a symbol of the high chivalric honor of the time, where not just military strength, but also personal valor were at stake. Though a direct sword fight between the two leaders did not occur, the significance of their combat remained. King John II was forced to surrender and agree to a ransom, which marked a significant point in the war. The Black Prince's victory boosted English morale and further solidified his reputation as one of the most formidable knights of the medieval period. Despite the lack of a personal one-on-one duel, this event remains one of the defining moments of the 100 Years' War. That's it for today's video. Please hit that like button and subscribe for more videos.